let's talk about sound design for footsteps. It is tricky, it can be a pain in the ass, and it's one of the things I think when you start out as a sound designer that it can be very easy to get wrong. So I figured when I was getting started doing sound design, I would love to have seen a tutorial like this and had some information passed on to me that could be useful. So that's what I'm doing. Let's do it. First of all, who am I? I am Ross Tregenza. I am a sound designer and composer. I'm the audio director at Sumo Nottingham. We most recently made the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, which was a lot of fun. Footsteps in that were absolutely crucial to get right because, first of all, it's a cat and mouse kind of game where you're running away or chasing people. You need to know where people are at all times, and you want to listen out to try and figure out from the footsteps not only where people are but whose footsteps those are. So I had a lot of feedback to provide for the player, which needed to be meaningful. And on top of that, you've got a great opportunity for cinematic impact because you've got characters like famously Leatherface, the big dude with the chainsaw. He's like 6'5", and you want those footsteps to be huge and deep and powerful, so it's important to get that right. So whatever projects you're working on, you've got an opportunity to provide really cool, meaningful player feedback and a cinematic punch. Like if you've got a giant robot, if you've got hordes of zombies, there's so many reasons why you want to get footsteps right, and they're tricky, so let's talk about that. So when I talk about footsteps, what I'm going to deal with today is really primarily just the actual footsteps on the ground. I'm not talking about body movement in particular, or just Foley surrounding like the bags you're carrying, anything like that for your character. This is purely about the footsteps. Foley and body movement, all that other stuff, very difficult as well, but that's a subject for another day. So I think what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about how footsteps get put into the game, in case that's something that's new to you. If you're already doing practical sound design, you might want to skip this little bit if it's obvious to you, but if you don't know this stuff, there's no reason why it would be obvious to you, and it could be useful for your thinking about how you're designing the footsteps down the line. Then after that, I will tell you about like what is my system for footsteps, how I break it down, and how I build that up into footsteps that you hear in the game. And then finally, I think we'll do a little practical bit of design work I'll open up Cubase, and I'll actually build some content so you can see the kind of sounds I use and decisions that I make when I'm doing it, that kind of stuff. I think practical tutorials are super useful. So let's do it. So in terms of how footsteps get added to the game, let's just go step by step through that very linear process and talk about different stages. So first of all, you need assets. So you need to design the sounds, which means, well, we'll come to that in a bit when we talk about how we break down the individual components that are going to be layered together later on. But you just need to design all of that stuff. You need loads of variations for everything for footsteps. Even if you're baking all of the content into like one footstep at a time and you're not doing loads of like stems and layers and stuff, you still need shitloads of variation, like 10 variations that are very slightly different minimum, because if not, the ear hears that immediately. If it's the exact same sound every single time, it's very tiring on the ear and your game will just sound very dated. So don't be stingy on variations for anything ever. Like, we've got loads of memory for games now. I mean, maybe if you're doing something for like smartphones and stuff, yeah, be a bit more optimized, but I would say sort of go big and then cut down as needed later on down the line. Like, it just doesn't make sense to be stingy on content, because content is super important. So you design the sounds, then you need to set up a system. Normally for most major games now, that'll be in middleware. Middleware is the software that's kind of the connecting tissue between the game engine itself. You get game engines like the Unreal Engine and oh my god, what's it called? Brain fart. I'll put it here in a subtitle. This one, whose name, Unity. Oh my god, Unity. Sorry, yeah, Unity. I don't need to write anything here anymore. I wonder if I will. Let's write something there. Yeah, so I've completely derailed myself there. Yeah, so you've got the game engine and you've got your content you've designed. You need somewhere in between where you set up the systems, tell the game engine like how to deal with those assets over distance, how loud they should be, any kind of modulation based on game events, like stuff like that. So two big ones are Fmod and Wise with two W's. Both of those have got absolutely loads of tutorials online on how to use them, and they're free to download for you to play around with and evaluate and just do sort of your own educational work. I use Audiokinetics Wise, again with two W's. I don't really know why it's two W's, but there we go. That's just what Sumo tends to use primarily for our games. So for Texas Chain Saw I used Wise, and for previous games before that. I mean, the way Wise and Fmod handle things is slightly different, but the end result is the same, so feel free to learn either. Yeah, I'm not being paid to advertise anything. I just happen to use Wise professionally, primarily. So you've designed the sounds, you've designed the systems and your middleware, or you can also do that directly in the engine if you're not using middleware. And then when they're ready to go, you'll need to tag footsteps into the animations. So if the animator's done the animations already and they're ready to go, then you can just go in and tell it to play a footstep sound every time that foot hits the ground, but making that as regular and natural as you can. It's important to spend plenty of time doing that to make sure that you're getting it exactly at the right moment, because you get a gallop sound very quickly if you've put it slightly off, and it sounds incredibly unnatural if the footsteps are out of sync with the animator's rhythm. So spend time with that, it's worth it. It'll ruin your lovely footstep sounds if you've done that badly or just rushed it. The next thing is to set up materials. In the world there'll be whatever, depending on your game, there'll be grass, mud, concrete, smooth stone, metal, things like that you're actually walking on. And these need to be tagged as different types of materials, and you'll need a material system that's sending information back to your middleware to say what kind of material you're currently standing on. So if you're standing on deep metal or dirty stone, then you would need to have set that up in Wise or whatever middleware you're using, and so that it can like switch between them so that the footsteps change. And so that if you're running through a house and then out into wet grass and then onto rocks, then you know the material's changing appropriately. And it's important that you've got a good sense of identity to each of those different materials, that they've got a strong difference between them, because it gives you just drama and creative impact in the game. So you set up the materials. At that point, it's a case of you getting into tweaking and revising and stuff like that. Once you've tagged them in, hopefully very soon after that, or even immediately, you'll be able to like play the game with your new footsteps in. Chances are they won't sound very good at first. They never do. So you immediately need to go and just start tweaking. You'll need to tweak like things like attenuation range, which is the fall off of the sound over distance, to make sure that feels appropriate and provides the correct feedback for your game. And then you may have other parameters that you've got, like low pass filtering over time that just muffles the footsteps as they're further away. Lots and lots of stuff like that, and it becomes just a cycle at this point of endlessly tweaking. I was tweaking the footsteps for Texas Chain Saw for years and years. Probably a week didn't go by where I didn't change the footsteps in some way very slightly, just to get them exactly right. And you'll know when it's right and you'll know when it isn't, so just keep tweaking and be honest with yourself at that stage. And that's it. That, like I say, that last stage of tweaking and tweaking and tweaking just goes on for a long time, but it needs that to get it right. So yeah, let's move on to what I do for my system. I'm not saying this is the best way, it's just the way I do it. So my preferred system for footsteps is to use individual layers for a load of different key elements, and then trigger all of those layers at the same time, so that one footstep is made of, what have I got? I've got 1, 2, 3, like 4, possibly 5 individual layers that can be mixed and matched for different characters. I think it depends on your game and the quantity of different characters and different types of footstep you've got, but it can be very useful if you have just sort of character agnostic layers that you can mix and match for each character, and say that like this guy uses this number 1 part here and then this number 3 part there, and then instead of having to just design huge amounts of content for all the different characters, you've got a much more maintainable, smaller database of these layers that you're matching up for each of the characters. The layers that I use are impact, which means thump, the actual thump of the foot on the ground; color, by which I mean sort of character of the character, probably be a better name for it. So like creaking metal of a boot, or like flip-flop movement sounds and things like that. Material that I talked about, so that's the impact on the different types of material. And flare, which can just be something added based on the character. I mean, if the character's got like something that's clinking on them that goes along with footsteps, it might be a good opportunity to set that up here just as a freebie, basically. You know, like if they have like a metal dangly thing hanging from their waist, so that when they run you want that clinking a bit more, you could set that up here. Or flare could just be another layer that adds something different to your character. Like Leatherface, for example, had more bass in his footsteps than everyone else, so he had an extra layer of just like sub bass kick when his feet land, just for that added boom boom boom. So yeah, it's just a case of mixing and matching those for different characters. Like, so for the impact layer you might have like female small, and then for the color layer you could have flip-flop, and then material will switch in game depending on what material you're on, and then flare you could have nothing, or you could have the creaking of a keychain that they've got, clanking of a keychain that they've got dangling on their belt or something. So mixing and matching, basically. I think the easiest thing to do now is if I just make some footsteps, and I'll show you what I do when I build it. So footsteps. I'm just gonna throw a few tracks in here. Not going to do anything too crazy. This is Cubase, by the way. I love Cubase because I've used it for 1 billion years, but you can do everything I'm doing here in whatever, Reaper, Pro Tools, Ableton, Logic, whatever your DAW of choice is. So a few very important details that I should feel like I want to mention right away so that I don't forget to mention them later. The biggest thing you have to remember for footsteps is the impact, or call it the attack, if we were talking about like a piano sound or something, that needs to land at exactly the same point in every asset that you bounce down. So I mean, when you're bouncing them down, it doesn't matter if you've got like a bit of grain and a bit of detail on when you mix the assets down. But afterwards, if you're like me, I do all my work in a DAW, and then I take things into like RX is what I take it into, just like a editor. You can check things in, and at that point, I like to make sure that the assets have all the impacts at the correct points. The thing is with footsteps, like more than anything else, really, if there's a little bit of a delay on some of the assets, if you've got like a random pool of 20 footsteps, if the impact of the footstep on the ground is at, say, 0.5 seconds into some of them, but then others are at 0.8 or 0.9, it's going to sound like a weird sort of jumbly gallop when you add those assets into the game. So it's important to make sure that even if the sounds themselves are quite detailed and stuff, when you edit them, that they all come down to that same key point of like hitting at the same point, so you don't have any weirdness when you tag them into the animations and they eventually get into the game. So, all right, chatting aside, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what am I going to do? I'm going to do some thumpy impact elements, and then some leather boot elements, and then some material crunch elements, and I'll show you like this is what I would do generally, and then I kind of mix and match things on various layers when it gets to the point of like assembling them. So I'm going to I've not really pre-planned anything at all here, so I'm just going to like find some assets and drop them in. So first of all, let's go for leather boot, because that's a nice starting point. So I'm going to do just searching my assets for leather boot. Bit much. It's kind of ugly. Too subtle and creaky. Also, let's just say that I'm going to go through this very quickly. I mean, I would spend a very, very long time doing this in practice, but for now, I'm just going to find something decent. Okay, here we go. All right, this boot foley, whatever it is, stuff here, this is decent enough. So let's pick out a few bits here that we can clearly see have got like a strong attack to them. So we'll get that bit there. That looks fine. That's probably okay. That's too attacky. That looks all right. This is interesting. Yeah, the bits just don't, the shape of them you can see immediately is just, for one reason or another, not what we're looking for this. So what we're looking for here is like the leather thump of the boot, but with some attack, but not too aggressive, because we'll be adding like a kick drum and stuff like that later for more advanced attack elements. And like I said, this is, I mean, for the sake of a tutorial, normally I would spend best part of a day going through these and cleaning them up and finding the best ones, but we're just doing this nice and quick and dirty, just having a lovely time doing some sound design. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, I don't love them. Okay, let's see if we can clean them up a little bit. These first ones are very sluicy. Let's just do a bit of surgery with Cubase EQ. Like, I feel so that's probably going to help. It sounds like walking in snow. Ugh. I mean, that one's okay. That one's too much shit going on after the initial attack. Is that all right? That's better. These are weird. It sounds like just a polar bear having a little walk through some stuff. Yeah, I'm killing them. You know what? For the sake of demonstration, these two will do. Even those, they're a little artifacty. Like, these wouldn't withstand any sort of pitching up or down when you take them into the middleware or the game engine, because yeah, it's already a lot of touch artifacty. By which I mean, like, some sounds are very clean and can withstand a lot of manipulation, like metal vibrations, things like that. As long as you've got a decent like quality source recordings, you can do a lot to them. Some sounds like this that have sort of a, I don't know why, it's often like material sounds and leathery sounds like this. You really can't pitch them up or down too far, because you get these horrible audible artifacts of just like a strange harmonics and stuff very quickly. So for now, this will do us. So we've got two there. So that's like a little bit of leather. Now what we're going to do is some material impacts. So let's have a look at, let's just do grass and mud. So let's find some sounds of walking in grass. Oh, that's quite nice, actually. A bit subtle, but again, I mean, subtle is not what we're doing right now. There's much better ways of doing all of this stuff. I'm just doing it fast and dirty. Jesus Christ, that's a bit much. Let's bring that down. Okay, so I am just going to pick a couple of these. This is just walking in grass. You can see that it's got some nice detail to it. Let's just take those ones. We don't need any more than that. We're just making a point at the moment. So there we go. Let's colour these while we're at it, just so we know what we're looking at. So that's our leather boot elements. These are our lovely grassy elements. So let's check these are all right. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, that's actually very nice content. Okay, and let's choose one more material. Let's do metal, I guess it's pronounced. See if I can find a more detailed. Oh, that's fun. Let's go with that. It's like walking on a slightly resonant hollow metal. Completely valid. I mean, if you're watching this tutorial, you're probably working in video games or film, and you know this is something that happens a lot in both of those areas. So let's go with it, shall we? Let's treat ourselves to some resonant metal. Resonant metal. Resident Evil. Resident Evil. Sorry. Back on track. Okay. Here we go. So we've got our grass. These I think are nice, aren't they? Those tails are abrupt. Let's just clean those up. You know what? While we're here, let's just do a little bit of proving what I said earlier about how some sounds can be pitched down better than others. So this is that leathery sound, and this is that metal sound. So if I pitch this down loads, and I'll do the same for this one, hopefully this will stand up to what I just said. This is now the metal pitch down, which should sound kind of cool. It does. It sounds lovely. And this, there we go. See, I was right. That is an absolute disaster of a sound. Interesting, isn't it? It's just something you get to learn over time. But it's an interesting thing to know. You get an ear for what sounds you can really push up and down and mangle, and which sounds you can't. So metallic sounds are your friend generally. That's what I'm saying. So we're going to build these footsteps out of 3 elements. We're going to have this leathery element here. We're going to have a material element, which both of these represent. These are like random pools of 5 each. And then let's just have a little brackety element of a kick drum, maybe just a kick drum. Let's have a look. Let's say this character is quite heavy. I'm just going to find a nice kick drum. There we go. That's cool. Just a fun kick drum. And finally, let's just add a tiny bit of dirt. Something I did for Texas Chain Saw Massacre. I mean, this is about the context of your game. But a lot of games are set in sort of like destructed environments. There we go. So if like Texas Chainsaw, almost all of your environment involves some kind of like debris and destruction, you can pretty much add this as a sweetener to any footstep, but it has to be super quiet because it's just very noticeable and gets kind of annoying after a while if it isn't. But here we go. Look, so we got just, you hear that? Just subtle dirt. I'm going to take the attack out of that even, so we're just dealing with. Very nice, just a lovely bit of debris. Honestly, there's almost no sound that doesn't benefit from just a little bit of dirt. Just like art, just like doing anything really. Just adding a little bit of texture and a little bit of layered detail is always a good thing. So there we go. We have got everything we need there. We've got the leathery boot element, we've got the material element, we've got a kick drum, and we've got some extra textural detail. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just put my quantize on, and I'm going to layer these little fellas together. Let's make so we'll make let's just make 3 footsteps in grass and then 3 footsteps in metal. I might need to spend a little bit of time just matching the attacks of these. Something you really need to do is match the attacks of your sounds. That stands for like everything when you're doing sound design. If you're kind of just throwing sounds together and adding loads of layers, which I'm a huge fan of, that's all good, but the attacks need to match. Otherwise you get this sort of flamenco effect, or just a sloppy blur, which you're not getting anything good from. I'm gonna obviously these are very limited leather sounds, but I'm going to throw these in for now. It's looking there like the attacks are going to match. That one doesn't, so let's just take that off. I'm just gonna, you see, I'm not matching the beginning of the sound. I can see where the meat is of the sound there. It's like around there. Oh, and look at that. So we can just go in and, like, after a while you should really be able to see where like the meat of these sounds are, and make sure that these points of attack are the same. So we're just going through, cleaning them up. Look at that. That's looking sexy. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you'll hear when it isn't. Look at that. That's way off. It's it becomes second nature very soon to match it, and it grates on you once you know what you're listening for. Oh yeah, and then we've got our lovely just little bits of debris. You can I mean with footsteps there's a lot of stuff happening at the attack stage, and it could be beneficial to just let things breathe a little bit, let things happen like this after the attack stage. So let's make sure that's loud enough. Now that we've got this on its own layer, I'm just going to do a little high shelf and just cut the end, just so that that's really accentuating the grain. There we go. All right, and we can just mute this top stuff now, this source material. So if I were building this in middleware, like Audiokinetic Wise, which is what I tend to use for games, what I would be doing is I would export each of these assets individually, and I would mix and match them with random layers, so that every time a footstep landed, you would have a random component from each of these 4 layers, and it's different every time. So instead of getting 6 footsteps here, we get a huge number of footsteps, because we got 4 layers randomizing asynchronously with each other. So we get just constant variation, and avoiding fatigue for the listener is a very key thing for sound designers to do. So that's a great thing. Anytime you can randomize layers, as long as you're not introducing too many layers into the game and, you know, causing strain on the performance, then that's always a good thing. Let's have a listen, shall we? Yeah, not too bad. Okay, all we need to do now is a little wee bit of mixing, I think. I don't know why I said a wee bit of mixing, that was weird. The kick drum is just a sweetener that can be really low. This leather can probably have a little bit off the high and the low, because it's just textural detail, it can come down. That's always going to be quite loud. How's that sound? Material sound is too high. No, that's still too high. I think that's too high. There we go. And how's our metal one sound? I think the metal one, just because for the metal one we want to focus on, is that our metal bit? I've forgotten. Yeah. We can push that up a little bit, because some materials are louder than others. That's just the nature of them. So there we go. And even if this was all I had, which it wouldn't be the case, I normally go for 5s, 10s, or 20s for this kind of stuff for quantity of variations. But even with what we've got here, because when we implement it, we'd have 4 different layers, and each of them are randomizing on each instance that the footstep hits, that the 4 different layers pick a different option, we get a huge amount of variation. So things to think about are keep the numbers high and make sure you've got the opportunity for variation, make sure the attacks land well, make sure that the balance of the different elements is good, make sure the material element is in there but isn't so high that it's making a nuisance of itself, and consider adding, that's not a word, adding, like we've got here with this yellow layer, just a layer of very fine crunchy detail, because it goes a long way. Even if it's not in every footstep, you could add it, you know, just randomly in for every 5th footstep or something like that. It just really adds textural detail, and good sound design is all about texture and just detail. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, footsteps are just so tricky, and it just takes a lot of practice to get them sounding right. So just play around, learn by doing is what I would say. Just give it a go and just keep on going until you get something that you're happy with. I hope that was useful. I've also done some tutorials on UI sounds and on gore for games, which may be of interest to you if you haven't seen those yet, just on my channel. Please like and subscribe, obviously. If I know that people are enjoying these, then and they're useful to people, then I'll keep making more. People seem to really like the ones I've done so far, and they seem to be helping people, which is the reason I've made them. So I hope this one is helpful too. If you've got any questions, then just put some comments in on the comments, and I'll get to them and I'll answer them. And yeah, thank you for watching. See ya.